All right, welcome to the Moving West unit overview. For this unit, we're going to be covering several different groups of people. The first groups of people are explorers and mountain men, the men of the montañas. Californios and Mexicanos, they're not cereals.
They do kind of sound like it, though.
Don't say Californios and Mexicanos.
What would they taste like, though?
Well, they would be delicious and amazing.
I'm pretty sure, like, California and Mexico, like, lots of avocado-y deliciousness.
Yeah, it'd be perfect.
I think it'd be fine.
But don't say Californios and Mexicanos. Say Californios and Mexicanos. You can do it. I know you can.
Sí se puede.
Then we'll come to missionaries, pioneer women, and the Mormons.
Please note that these missionaries are American missionaries, not Spanish missionaries.
Yes, we'll be emphasizing that particularly. And finally, 49ers and the Chinese that settled in the West.
All right. As we begin this unit, we are going to be talking about legacy. In other words, what can we see that has been left behind? How do we remember these groups?
Right. The lasting impact that each of these groups of people has had. Like, what we're studying them, but like, why is it that we should actually
why
care?
do we care? Yeah. Exactly. So explorers and mountain men are going to be covered in 16.2 and 16.4 respectively. And the highlights from each group, or these groups, would be most notably Lewis and Clark, who had, as you know from your mapping, a very interesting and long expedition that took them from St. Louis, Missouri, all the way to Fort Clatsop on the coast of Oregon.
And then back.
And then back in weird roundabout loops, right?
Couldn't have done it, though, without the lovely lady Sacagawea.
Sacagawea or Sacagawea.
Right.
Or,
yeah,
there's various ways.
Yes.
Then you have the failed.
Yeah, the big fat loser, Zebulon Pike.
Yeah, Zebulon Pike, he tried to find the source of the Mississippi River and somehow couldn't follow the river to where it started.
Yeah,
I don't know how you fail.
He couldn't even climb Pike's Peak, which he named after himself.
Yes.
He couldn't climb the right
He couldn't
mountain.
get all the way up.
Yeah.
No.
And then John C. Fremont.
Oh, I was going to mention about Pike, how he went to Mexico and got thrown in jail.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah, he disappeared on the map because he got arrested.
He was in jail,
yeah.
right? Just FYI.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. And then John C. Fremont, who kind of looks like Ryan Gosling.
Not as good, though.
Well,
it was.
in the 1800s.
Right.
In the 1800s.
But he's the guy that was the Bear Flag Revolt dude, right?
Yeah.
So that we should already know who he is, at least a little bit.
So a little wrap around on that guy.
And then we have mountain men who were traders and fur trappers. So their whole job was to go by themselves into the wilderness and kill furry things, which should upset you because, well, they're furry things. But they left behind some interesting things for us to use.
Their diaries.
Diaries, right? Because you're all alone. You got to talk to somebody. And then, of course, the rendezvous, right, where they met up once a year to make sure that they, were alive. And if you didn't show up, well, I guess you're dead.
Right. That's pretty much what they concluded happened to you.
Right.
So the highlights of that will be Manuel Lisa, who is a dude.
Not a woman, because his last name is Lisa.
Yeah, he's Spanish.
Not his first name.
Right. Hugh Glass and Jim Beckworth. One of those dudes may be familiar if you have heard of or seen the movie The Revenant.
I have not seen it because, well, I'm not allowed to go to movies very often with two little kids.
It's pretty hardcore. It's what happens when you get attacked by a bear and left for dead.
Right. You get a little mad.
And then you make your way back to civilization and everyone goes like, oh, we thought you were dead. Yeah, not so much.
Right. Then we have the Californios and Mexicanos.
Yes.
Not Californios. The Californios will be talked about in chapter 16, section 3. And then all of chapter 17 is going to be Mexicanos. So that's all the stuff that we can attribute to the Spanish settlement of Mexico and then the expansion of that. So this cultural impact that they're going to have on just anything in that area.
If you were in California schools, in elementary school,
particularly 4th grade.
Yes, you will find some of this information familiar. And even as we get into these other groups of people, some of that information may be familiar to you. So we're not duplicating the history that you may have already studied, but we're going into greater depth, specifically looking again at the legacy, the impact of those groups of people. Now that we know who they are and what they did, like, why is it that we are paying attention to them.
Right. We're not going to go to Mission San Juan Bautista and look at a mission, but we are going to remind you of things like the architectural things that we see all around us. We're going
Place
to
names.
talk about place names, but also the many industries that came from the occupation of the American Southwest by Mexicans and of course Californios. That we still see these things today. The legacy still is present. You just need to know that it's there.
Right. So, and again, we're going to differentiate between the missionaries from Spain that established the California mission system and interacted with Native American tribes versus the missionaries in the next set of people that are, American Caucasian missionaries coming from the East Coast traveling to the West.
Yes, wagon trains across the Rocky Mountains. Yes. So in chapter 16, sections 5, 6, and 7, we're going to take a look at people actually coming from the established United States of America across this land that we have acquired or are in the process of acquiring along the Oregon Trail. Now, the missionaries, the most notable families that we're going to be looking at are the Whitmans, Marcus and Narcissa Whitman. I particularly love that name of hers. And then the Spaldings.
Henry and Eliza.
Yes. Now, the Whitmans and the Spaldings were in the Pacific Northwest, and they were trying to convert to different tribes of Native Americans.
With differing outcomes.
With very different outcomes. One was particularly successful, the other, not so much.
Did you know about the love triangle?
There was a love triangle with who?
Between the Whitmans and the Spaldings.
Oh, them.
Yes.
Yes, I have heard some inkling of that.
It's pretty good stuff.
Well, can't wait to get there.
Yeah. Then pioneer women. Those women, they weren't just traveling on their own in all cases. Some women did come west on their own, but we'll also look at women that came west with their families to establish homesteads in this new, open, uninhabited land that nobody was living in.
No white people, so that there wasn't really no one there.
Right, because it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so Helen Carpenter, Lavinia Porter, and then a variety of African Americans, both men and women, who were taking advantage of the tolerance and openness of the West, the great distance from prejudice.
Well, the great distance from, say, the slave states,
right.
particularly. But there were there was a woman that I can't think of her name. She had this huge tract of land in Southern California, and she would be she was a refuge, and she took all kinds of people into her ranch and gave them a vocation. And then there's a tremendous number of Black men who came west and were cowboys. Yep. So that was a huge opportunity for some freedom and a way to escape what was happening.
And even in Oregon was even now still has a pretty significant African American population, primarily because of that westward movement.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have a group of people called the Latter-day Saints. Now, Latter-day Saints are more commonly known as Mormons. And in fact, in Saratoga, you guys have a Mormon church just down the street, and there's probably a good number within the community here at school who are participant in this religion. And the leaders of this religion, first and foremost, is Joseph Smith. And then after his passing, Brigham Young took control of the religion as they moved west to get away from persecution and eventually settling in Utah.
Yep. They were founded in upstate New York.
Upstate New York.
Yep. All right. And then finally, the 49ers and the Chinese. We're going to cover them in sections 8 and 9 of chapter 16. Of course, the gold rush. That's a pretty significant thing out here.
I mean, the gold rush was a really, really, really important thing. Not just because, well, yay, gold, but it was
Right.
It was just a really catalyzing event that caused so many people to come here, which is why California, even at the very beginning, was one of the most diverse places and continues to be so diverse. And it gave people opportunity and a reason to kind of hope, really.
Yes. And it also gives the United States a really great reason
to get all racist.
We'll look at all of the different routes that people would take. The Santa Fe Trail was one of those, but a variety of different paths that people would take to get here. I found it really interesting that there were so many people coming to the West, so frequently over this period of time that there to this day are still ruts across the American Western landscape where those wagon
Right. They must have been
Wagon
really
wheels,
deep,
yeah.
deep ruts.
yeah
And the group that the most, I guess, disparate group from what it was I guess, here before that came, it was the most shocking group to shock what the people expected were the Chinese people who immigrated specifically for the opportunity to get money and to send it home to their families. So this period in China's history is right about the time of kind of the Opium Wars.
Yep.
And so there was very little opportunity for young men in China to do anything that was really productive and something that would benefit their families. And so a whole bunch of Chinese men took the risk of getting on a boat, sailing around the world, coming to this place where they didn't know anybody, didn't speak the language, in order to try to better their lives. And the success that they had in not really mining, but in other ways, is really notable. And of course, we see that effect and that legacy all over the place, including, and most obviously, in Chinatown in San Francisco. Like that, there's Chinese culture all over the place. So
Exactly.
it's really...
and of course, as America's really good at doing,
Right.
great evidence of discrimination.
Right. So as these groups of Chinese men were making ways to make money, then white people said, oh, wait, we want to make money that way. Let's pass a law so you can't do that.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of that. That's for sure.
All right, and that's what we're covering.
Yay!
Cool.